Welcome to the Talking Tech and Talent podcast. I'm your host, Tim Hutchinson, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Ross Chaldecott, co-founder and CEO of Kind, an Aussie tech startup whose founders cut their teeth at the companies such as Atlassian and Shopify. Ross and I are going to explore the world of tech startups, from culture to hiring challenges to the broader startup environment and the influence of big success stories such as Atlassian on the startup community. We'll get into that right after this.
Welcome to the Ember Talking Tech and Talent podcast, where Australian business leaders and experts discuss the technology and talent challenges facing organisations today and the opportunities available to innovative businesses in the future. Let's get the conversation started.
Ross, welcome. Absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Tim. It's very good to be here. Really looking forward to this chat. I think it should be a good one.
Fantastic. Let's give you the now obligatory virtual applause. Oh, quite a good long one there. That bodes well for the conversation.
It's a good start.
Right, you and I, we've done a bit of prep this week, albeit briefly. We're busy people. Well, certainly you're a busy guy. But we've got a good conversation ahead.
I think so. Should be good.
To give a sense of that, we're going to learn about Kind, not Kinder, as I originally disappointed at first, but thought I was going to get chocolate, a surprise and a toy, but not this time.
We can talk about the name as well, if you like.
We'll get into the name, absolutely. We're going to talk about Kind. We're going to talk all things tech startup, culture, attracting talent, the effects of the macroeconomic climate, all this good stuff. We want to look at the effect of big success stories like, Atlassian, where you've worked previously and sort of cut your teeth. So, and what effect that has on the broader startup community. Plenty to cover, not enough time. Let's see how we go.
Great.
Before that, who is Ross sitting in front of me when he's not building $1 billion business?
Just kind of a regular, dull kind of guy. I've got 2 kids, got a wife.
Yep.
Not much,
Would they say the same? Regular, dull kind of guy?
Probably.
Surely not.
Outside of work, my purpose is to raise those 2 boys to be something, people that are worthwhile in the world, people that give a shit about other people, that are generally kind, that are generally good people. I think that's the best we can do as parents, and the rest is hope.
Has its challenges in the complicated world we live in?
Oh hell yeah. Especially we've moved countries a few times. We lived in Canada for a while I was at Shopify, and before moving from here, and that's challenging on young kids. It's a big thing for them to move countries.
Well, I think you said you've done. I've got it here. You've done South Africa, England, Australia, Canada.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're on the run at one point. What's
We never did a gap year, and so we've done it in very slow stages, moving every sort of 5-10 years or so.
So where are you from originally?
South Africa originally, grew up there.
South Africa, okay. And actually, I guess an exciting time to be back in Australia from the drive in the tech community, the tech economy is massive.
I think so. I think it's really interesting to see. I think we're at the beginning of the second wave, if that makes sense. We had, the Atlassians and the Canvas and the Culture
Afterpays
and Afterpays. They're all the first wave of tech. I think we're finally kicking into that second wave where we're starting to see the rise of some new and successful companies. You got Dovetail and Immutable and companies like that are starting to rise up a little bit, and hopefully Kind is going to be one of those. I think we're doing really, really well. We have a long way to go to get into those same realms as them, but this is definitely that second round of Australian tech, and that's a very exciting thing to be in.
And those pioneering companies, if we call them that, they've definitely put a global lens onto Australia.
They absolutely have. We have a lot to be thankful for. Those companies have really charged the path for the rest of us and made it a lot easier. It's still not easy. Australia has still got a lot of catching up to do. We're way, way behind the rest of the world, or at least the US. But I think we have a little bit of representation in there. When you speak to investors, they're not completely clueless as to what Australia is, and they've heard of Canva and Atlassian. So it definitely has made a big, big difference, especially as a funded company like we are.
Yeah, fantastic. And as we gradually sort of drift into the work conversation, I was quite interested. You made a point to me when we were chatting in the week that as a tech CEO, you come from a design background, relatively unusual. What does that bring to the party? What are the pros and cons of having a relatively unusual background?
I think it makes a difference to how we think about the company. If you think about us from the outside, we look a lot like just another infrastructure company. We build tools to enable developers to build products, right? We enable those companies. But when you bring a lot of design thinking in, it changes the way you think about how you structure the company, and the goal of the company and the role of the company in people's lives is to be so much more than just a place where engineers come, set things up and go away. It's a place where we try and bring the team together and enable a lot more players in there. And that's quite a different mindset, and you don't really see that in a lot of our competitor tools. And so hopefully that's going to be a big advantage for us. I think if you think about Airbnb is one of the great design-led businesses. Yeah. And they took what is a fairly standard industry and quite a well-known thing and really transformed that through the smallest possible
Very good point, yeah.
And we're trying to do the same sorts of things. We're trying to transform something that is quite stodgy, is quite boring, into something that can ultimately become...
I didn't mean to agree so readily there.
Feel free to.
It is a phenomenally dull space, yeah.
Yeah, it is. Actually, it's one of the advantages, right? A boring space is a very exciting place to be because nobody wants to play in the boring spaces.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for competition, go into something that's really exciting. Go into marketing tech, and you're going to have a lot of competition. But the boring space of dev acceleration infrastructure for software teams, right? That's a big advantage to be playing in a market like that because people are not thinking about, that's the thing I want to go and build. So we have a little bit of an early starter advantage, but then we try to turn that into something where we ultimately can become the word we use as a super brand, right? We're trying to create a company where people think about a world with more founders. In fact, that's our purpose as a company, is to create a world with more founders. We're trying to create a place where people will say, I have an idea and I want to go and make that a reality. How am I going to do that? And ultimately, we want to be the answer.
So just on this point, just let's go back a step so that we set some context for people listening or viewing. What is Kind? As I half jokingly said, I really thought it was pronounced Kinder. Yeah. I didn't think it was the chocolate egg company, but I did think it was pronounced Kinder, but clearly it's Kind. There's something in the name story there, but then perhaps tell me about that, but also what are you?
So every time a SaaS company gets started, and let's just kind of set the context on what SaaS companies are. SaaS companies are everything on the internet that's not just a website that doesn't do anything or a retail company is a SaaS business. A SaaS business is the tools that you use every single day. They're the products that you log into to get work done. And because every company is becoming a software company, because software is eating the world, they are becoming the backbone of the world. And so early stage founders in particular, but all SaaS companies are really the companies that are changing the world. Yes. They're the ones that are advancing humanity, literally advancing humanity. And so the future changes in society, the future changes in the way we do things and work and play are all coming out of the SaaS industry. So it's everyone and it's everywhere. It's a massive, massive thing.
Yes, okay.
And so whenever these companies get started, what they go and do is they go and build the same infrastructural pieces. They go and build authentication and user management so that their customers can log in and log out. They go and build feature flagging so that their engineers can control who can see what. They go and build experimentation using those feature flags so that they can run experiments and find out what's working in the tool and what's not.
Okay.
And then they go and build some kind of billing infrastructure at some point when they need to actually charge their customers for the product. And we realized that companies were doing this over and over and over again.
Yeah,
they were building infrastructure. They weren't building their products.
Which is necessary, but adds essentially zero value to what they're ultimately building.
It's a bit like if you built a house and if you needed bricks, you build a brick factory to build bricks, and then you need electricity, you build a power plant. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing as happening in the SaaS industry where people are building infrastructure, which means instead of spending the first 6 months of your company's existence building your actual product, the thing that brings value, they're spending 6 months building infrastructure.
So ultimately you're enabling startups.
Correct. Yeah.
Through that process. And for those who just don't know you as yet and may want to, when did this journey start? What scale are you at now? I know congratulations, done an initial raise of 10.6 million.
It's been, for me, it's been a bit of a kind of lifetime journey. I started my career as a founder. I left high school. My dad said, let's go start a thing. So we started a thing and we tried building some products.
Yeah, right. Okay.
This was back in the late 90s in South Africa. There wasn't a lot of venture capital going around, so we bootstrapped a few things.
Yeah, wow.
And so at that point, we were building a tool to sell tickets on the internet, and we had to charge people's credit cards for those things, and there was no infrastructure to do that.
Okay.
You couldn't just walk into a bank and say, I need a merchant account to sell things online. They didn't even know what the hell that meant.
Yeah, right.
And so, we tried, we built a bunch of, we had to build our own infrastructure, and there was like from the ground up back in those days. And after a while of doing that, I decided it was time to go get a real job, and I assumed someone's going to go fix this. So next time I want to start something, it's going to be fixed.
Yes.
And so, went to work at Atlassian, did some amazing things there, built that company. I was fortunate to join super early, and so got to grow up with that company and learn how great companies are built.
Rumor has it employee 280?
Somewhere around there. I don't know the exact number.
Not bad, is it?
Inside the first 300,
Fantastic.
And so learned a lot about both dev tools and how developers build things and the problems that they have, but also saw the same problem happening inside of Atlassian. And this was a decade between those two things, seeing them struggling with, Mike and Scott had baked in all the infrastructure in the early days, and now to make any changes to that product was a massive, massive job. You had to go rip out code if you wanted to change feature plans, right?
Yep.
And so I thought, holy shit, we're seeing this again. But I wasn't, I was loving the career I was doing there, and I didn't want to move on from that. And so, moved on eventually to Campaign Monitor as their head of design, and saw how marketers send things on the internet, and then moved on to Shopify. Shopify, a company of 6,000 people, had the same problem. So while I was learning about how to build massive things at massive scale with massive teams, and seeing how people sell things on the internet, I was also realizing that Shopify itself at that scale had the same problem.
So you're kind of saying, I mean, I don't want to suggest you're slow on the uptake, but
it took me a while.
We're 10 or 15 years in.
Yeah.
There's large signs being held up to say there's a real problem here.
Yeah.
Your assumption is, as a lot of us do, assume somebody will solve it.
Yeah. I was waiting for someone to solve it so I could go build my next company on top of it.
Yeah.
And eventually left Shopify and was looking at what to do next. And I kind of looked at the world and went, people are solving pieces of this. You've got companies solving authentication. You've got companies solving feature flagging. You've got companies solving billing. But that's not actually where the important stuff is. The important stuff is when you bring those together and you give tools to the whole company to actually run the business. Shopify does this really, really well for the retail industry. Nobody's doing it for the SaaS industry.
So are you a little like a Wix for building websites or a Shopify for building a store? What's the most appropriate analogy?
The analogy we actually use often more internally, we try not to kind of promote it too much, but it's Shopify for SaaS.
Right, okay.
So if you think about what Shopify does, Shopify has by far the worst page designer in the industry of tools like it, right? Squarespace is substantially better as a page designer, right? But Shopify is a far, far better tool. Right? Shopify is the best tool in the world for starting and running a business. And the reason for that is that it enables all the other parts of running a business. Because once you've launched a few e-commerce businesses, you realize pretty quickly that it doesn't really matter how differentiated your brand is in terms of the design of the website.
Yes.
An e-commerce website tends to just be a grid of products.
Yes.
You need to have great photography. You need to have a great brand. You need to have a great logo. But how your site is designed is actually largely immaterial.
Yeah, right.
What does matter is how performant it is. What matters is your order fulfillment, your inventory management, your order management, all of the things that actually go on behind the scenes that allow people to run really, really effective businesses.
Yeah.
And so we look at the same thing. It's not, it's about building all of the tooling that people need in order to really effectively run their businesses and grow their businesses. It's not about being, the dominant player in auth or the dominant player in feature flagging. It's about how you bring those things together and enable a team to run a business. And that's actually the tooling that's missing. You can buy all those individual tools. You'll not be able to glue them together in the way that actually matters.
What a phenomenal opportunity. I mean,
it's huge.
What do they call it? There's some blue water out there, isn't there?
Well, I actually think this is one of the last universal problems left in tech. So, we solved the retail problem. How do you sell things on the internet? And Shopify, Amazon, they have demonstrated that is a solved problem. I wouldn't want to try and compete in that industry. It's done.
Yes.
It is a figured one. Maybe we'll see some big advancements, but for now, that's a largely solved problem. The same in the communication space. How do we communicate on the internet?
Yes.
Slack, Facebook, all of these companies.
There's incremental changes, but it's a solved. It's like search. I mean, it's kind of solved. Yeah.
We know how to, these universal problems that affect every human on the face of the planet are solved. But then you look at SaaS, and the universal problem is not solved. And this therefore affects the companies trying to build products, the engineers within those companies trying to actually do the work of building those things. And it ultimately affects every human being who would be using those products, because if you can't get that product to market, it could be the greatest freaking product in the world. But the inability to actually execute on those ideas is what is limiting our advancement of humanity. And so for us, it's a really, really big thing that we empower every single founder on the face of the planet. And we do a lot of things that, to think about how do we create a world with more founders so that more people who just have really great ideas can ultimately build great businesses. It doesn't have to be just engineers as we typically think about SaaS businesses. Ultimately and eventually in time, it's going to be everyone. And we want to enable as many of those people.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to have a section sort of further on around culture. So try to park that for a moment. But I want to talk to you about, you've touched on Atlassian more than once. I think it's just an interesting story to either people in the know or the layperson, and it's a big story. So I want to understand, again, a couple of things really. Some of the influence that spending time with Atlassian through a period of growth has had on you, your thinking. But also, I mean, my impression or my understanding is that the Atlassians have this so-called flywheel effect and are kind of spinning off other startups and creating other high growth opportunities. So just explore that with me for a little bit. It's interesting to people, I think.
I'd say Atlassian and Shopify, I've been very fortunate to work in both of those companies.
Yes.
And both of those companies are a little bit of training ground for how to do things really, really well.
Okay.
You can look at the environments that have been created where there's a very, very high degree of autonomy, where people are trusted to make their decisions, and given the ability and the opportunity to fail if they need to, but the understanding that they are allowed to push really, really hard and go and take some risks.
Yeah, right.
And you combine that with a high alignment culture where the company is very, very open, where default to open internally is kind of the default philosophy, where mission is very, very heavily pushed into the company, where values are very heavily pushed into the company, where a culture is built within the company. And when you bring together alignment and you bring together autonomy, you have this kind of magic sauce that allows you to build really, really high-performing cultures, where decision-making velocity obviously is of high importance within those cultures. It allows you to make really smart, really good decisions really quickly.
And having worked there over a period of time, I think just under 5 years, and again, it's probably a layman question, but that mission, was it always one simple mission that people were aligned to, or was it a mission or priorities that continually changed and were continually put on the table?
In great organizations, you kind of have to structure how the organization ladders down the organization. So you have to get communication and mission and structure to echo from your CEO, Mike and Scott in this case, or in our case, myself, down the organization. And you use mechanisms and tools to do that. And the most high-level one is the mission of the company. Atlassian, in my time, they changed its mission a couple of times, but always those were fundamental changes in response to the market or in response to the change that they wanted to make in the company. We actually at Kind have a double layer. Our purpose is to create a world with more founders. We're 10 years away from being able to fulfill even close to a portion of that. And so within that, we have a mission, which is, this is the thing we're trying to do right now. And that mission today is reinvent the way the software companies get started. That's the thing that we focus our energies onto. It's a piece of create a world with more founders. And so we focus our energy on that thing. And that's what aligns our whole team. Every single person in our company is there to try and create a world with more founders and to reinvent the way the software companies get started. And then within that, we have the projects and the goals that we have as a company. We have focus areas. Here are the things that we're actually going to spend our energies on. And those tend to cycle a lot more rapidly. So while we intend to have our purpose for a decade, we intend to have our mission for probably a year or two. And then within that, we have focus areas and shorter lived goals that kind of exist for months or quarters, sometimes a year. And so we use all of those mechanisms to structure a business that ladders all the way down so that people have that alignment factor. It's not saying this is what we need to go do, this is how you do it. It's saying these are the things we need to go and do, go and figure out how to make those things happen in the world.
Yep.
And so, every single person who joins Kind, the first thing I say to them is, this is crazy what we're trying to accomplish. But if we can pull it off, it will change the world. It will have the biggest possible impact. And so you have to have that belief. But I think we have got some big advantages. I think the problem that we are solving is so very big that if you think about those universal problems, if you think about world-changing problems, this is one of those things which affects just so many companies. So, you look at a lot of companies, a lot of startups in particular starting up, and really the thing they're solving is a relatively small focused thing.
Absolutely.
And this is not a small focused thing. This is why we have $10 million of investment while we're effectively a pre-seed company, is because Blackboard understood straight up, you don't do this thing on the cheap. If you try and do it on the cheap, you're not going to end up successful. And so you have to invest the time, you have to invest the money in order to achieve that growth, because what we're trying to do is literally an impossible thing. But if there's one company that I think is capable of doing it,
yes,
it is this collection of people that we've assembled that is freaking amazing, that I think is going to take us to that next level.
It's so exciting. It's infectious passion for what you're doing. It really is. I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? So talking about culture then, I know from our world again of talent and talent acquisition, etc., growth is predicated on really broadly two things in terms of people. You've got to attract people, and you've got to retain people. Plus, actually, you've got to lose the people who don't fit with that whatever culture you're building. So let's explore that from a number of angles. Your talk to me about the notion of building a 100-year business and culture. What does that mean apart from the obvious?
I think it's the very fundamental of that is that you start with culture. You don't start with problem. I think a lot of businesses start with the problem. They go get really excited about this one problem, and then they try and build that one thing. And typically, the story you hear from most that have actually survived that and succeeded is about a year and a half. For the first year and a half, we hired people who looked kind of like us and we'd want to have a beer with. And at about a year and a half in, we looked at the people that we had and we said, what can we codify out of these people to define as our values? Like, what are the things that feel like they're common trends, the goodness in this business that we can codify into our values? And then they create their values from that. And it works. Most, those businesses have succeeded, but most fail. But the thing that you're doing is you're playing Jeopardy with your culture. You're literally leaving it up to chance as to whether it's going to be a successful culture or a shit one. And we started the other way around.
Plus, when it's all in your own vision, you're essentially missing all the opportunity of diversity of ideas, inclusion, all of the stuff that makes a fundamental positive difference.
Yeah. So we said we're going to do things exactly the opposite direction. We started with our values, and our mission and our purpose. Those things were defined before we actually ever looked at hiring a single person into the company, and we used those values in order to hire. So we looked at every single person, and we still do this, and we will do this forever. Every single person that we hire goes through a values interview where we talk about the values and we try and identify, do we feel that they're going to live our values? And we're very, very upfront with our values, because if you're going to join us, you have to be aligned to those values. You have to be passionate about our purpose. I try to put people off as much as I possibly can joining us. I try and make sure they understand this thing is crazy, it's going to be hard, but this is the change we will make in the universe if we can do it. And so, it doesn't often work.
That's what I was about to say. You are goading the right people into.
Possibly.
I know I'm somebody who's driven by fear of failure. So the notion that there's something to strive for. I'd be motivated by that sort of speech. I'd be thinking, don't you dare assume that would be
but that's
too
also
difficult.
That is also what we want. We want people who are crazy driven, because we're gonna say to them, go figure out how to do this. Tell us, we're not going to tell you how to figure it out. You're going to figure out how to figure it out. You're going to help us build this company. And right now we're 30 people, 29 people. Hopefully in a year or two's time we'll be a few hundred people. At that point, it can't be the Ross show. It needs to be the company show. I read a really great article a little while ago. You can be the king or you can be rich. You don't want to be the king. Because the king has ultimate control. The king is in charge of everything. Every decision goes through the king. That's not a great place to build a scalable company. What you want to do is build a company that is about, and rich is the wrong word, but is about enabling people, about creating as much abundance as possible. We have a value which is to create a bigger pie.
Yeah.
And it's literally a reference to that thing, which is how do we create as much abundance in the world? If we start from this view that there is an unlimited amount of everything in the world, then each person needs to be thinking about how they build the biggest possible pie instead of scrabbling over their piece of the small pie.
Yeah.
And most businesses, unfortunately, are 100% the opposite of that. Most businesses tend to find everybody scrapping over, how can I get the biggest opportunity, the maximum amount of this pie as possible? And we say to our company, that is the opposite of what we want. Go build the biggest fucking pie, and at the end, we'll all have a great giant.
And we'll all feast.
Exactly. Right.
And there'll be plenty left over. Yeah.
So
on that point, just out of interest, have you reached that tipping point now where, because kind of you are the king to this stage, I guess. Have you reached that stage where exciting things happen in the business that don't have your fingerprints all over them?
This is the most exciting thing. I was actually,
because that's what's so cool when you get that tipping point.
Yeah, it's we hit that a little while ago. We have a fairly amazing leadership team.
Yep.
So we have just about every kind of key role has somebody who looks after it, whether they have a team underneath them or not. They're still the people who are leading that discipline.
Yes.
And I was actually chatting to our head of people a little bit earlier today, and I said to her, I remember a time where I was signing all of the employment contracts myself, sending those things out, then figuring out how the hell to get a laptop to somebody, then figuring out where to store the employment contracts, and we didn't even have an HR system.
But you're talking when? You're talking 6 months ago?
This is 6 months ago.
Yeah, right.
And now, when somebody new starts, that decision is totally, I'm involved in the decision, are we going to hire this person, and I'm often involved in their interviewing.
Yes.
But beyond that, all of the instrumentation of that hire actually happens totally, independently. And this is, I think, where businesses start to get exciting, when they start to take on a life of their own. And it's not me, again, it's not the Ross show. It's every person in the company doing the job that they were put there to do and doing it incredibly well. That's where I think the magic is happening. And the beauty of being still a small company is that we don't think about just this is your role and this is all you do. We think about this is the company and this is what it needs from you. Go figure out the most effective way to do that thing. It may, in a traditional sense of the word, it may be in your job description or not. We don't care about job descriptions. We have things that need to happen, and we need people who can charge ahead and make them happen. We have the person who looks after our employee experience comes from a legal background. So she actually does most of our legal work that doesn't need to go out to our external counsel.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of like having our own internal counsel as well as our employee experience person. And that's kind of a special thing. And she just took that role on and is doing just an amazing job at it. And so, I think this is how great companies happen is they start to take on a life of their own. They start to become their own entity and will themselves into existence to some extent. And I think Kind, in a lot of ways, has been, since the beginning, has been manifesting itself into existence. But I think we've already hit that point where it's starting to have a little bit of a life of itself.
So exciting. Yeah. So on that point, you say 6 months ago you were trying to work out where to save an employment contract.
Yeah.
So you presumably now are more traditionally in the role of CEO, but as the thing grows, in theory, there are three of you, aren't there, who are co-founders?
We have three co-founders, that's right.
So in theory, as the thing grows, you should, in theory, be able to focus on, your role should become increasingly defined. So what's the distinction between the three of you? What really is the hopefully complementary skill set?
From the get-go, we said we have complementary skill sets. And they are different skill sets, and we need to each play to the thing that's most valuable.
Yeah.
My role as CEO makes a ton of sense. I kind of overlook the business. I focus on growing the business that is not product. And then Dave and Ev, my co-founders, their real focus is on building an amazing technical platform that can empower all of us.
So going back to that, so if your role is, your role is CEO, but if you're in the right seat there, which I'm sure you are, going back to that whole point of a design background, do you have a design creative sort of personality in the traditional sense, and does that bring something to it? Are you a creative guy outside of work, and do you bring something to...
So there's three parts to the role of the CEO, the fundamental three parts. One is culture and storytelling.
Yep.
That's design.
Yep.
That's literally what we as designers spend our careers learning. Is how do you create environments? How do you create experiences? How do you help people to understand complicated concepts? How do you help them to rally behind an idea? That's storytelling. That's
what's come out of these podcast conversations?
Oh, yeah?
Now, in the first sort of 6 or 8 conversations, I was talking to chief data officers.
Yeah.
Now, to someone who doesn't know the world of a chief data officer, you may think, oh, it's data, it's very dry. They're all storytellers.
Yeah.
And they're brilliant storytellers.
Yeah. That's what the role of a chief is in any business. It's not to, at a small scale, it's to do the work, but as the business grows up, it's to become the chief storyteller in your area. It's to define the culture of your part of the business. It's also, there's a great book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, where he talks about type 1 and type 2 CEOs.
Yep.
Your type 1 CEOs are the strategic thinkers. They need an executional CEO, executive layer, a group of people who can go and execute that business and take it into the world.
Yep.
The type 2 CEOs are very executional mind. They need people who are strategic, big thinkers to be in that tier beneath them. I'm very much the strategic, and then I need really, really amazing executional muscle to run the business beneath me. So I can be culture and storytelling as point number one. The next part to it is culture and storytelling is number one. The next part is hiring great people. This is literally building my executive team, my leadership team. We don't talk about executives, we're too small for executive team, but they're the leadership group. And the third bit is
and to recognize that you can't do it all. You have to. You're only as good as people around you.
And I think the sooner you realize that in a rapidly scaling company, that you have to have great people there to do the jobs, the more successful you're likely to be. And the third thing is promoting and killing new things. So a lot of my role is not in being involved in every single product decision anymore. I'm still kind of across the product decisions, and I'm very heavily involved in the day-to-day of the product.
Yes.
Because we're too small for that not to be the case. But a lot more and more, my role is becoming to make sure that we're doing the right things, to make sure that we're aligned on the right direction and the reasons that we're doing things, more so than the day-to-day operation of figuring out what we need to be.
Does your, again, I'm making this assumption because I'm not sure you directly answered about sort of whether you're a creative type. The question I was going to ask was, are you therefore a person with perhaps a relatively short attention span, a multitude of ideas, and you need an offsider who's kind of your conscience around whether they have any part in reality, or is that a complete misjudgment of you?
I mean, to some extent, yes. My job as CEO is to be the biggest thinker in the company. And to make sure that we have a strategy that's so very, very big, but that's not a useful thing for me to only be that. Like all great companies, we have an appetite that's far bigger than our ability to consume.
Yes.
We're more likely as a company to die of indigestion than starvation, right? We have an unlimited supply of ideas.
Now you're going to need people on that journey. And a bit like a movie star pitching a movie. Let's be honest, this is a good opportunity to talk to people out there. Our networks are very strong, and you'll have access to those networks. Pitch Kind to people who potentially don't know you and may want to be part of that journey. And also, tricky question, but who shouldn't join you? Who's going to hate their living existence working with Ross and the team day to day?
It's an easy one to sell to people because the purpose that we have as a company is one of the biggest purposes. Who doesn't want to help people to pull themselves out of nothing? Who doesn't want to help people to start companies that they couldn't have done before?
Yes.
It's a very easy mission to explain to people and get them excited about. But I think if you deeply believe that Kind is the sort of place that you want to be, you have to be driven to push and to do things and to think. You can't be somebody who needs to be given direction. You need to be a self-starter. You need to be able to take the mission that we have, internalize it, and drive towards it. You need to be pushing. I spoke about autonomy and alignment. You need to be somebody who can take that alignment and run towards autonomy.
See, actually, that combination of autonomy, and I'm adding this, but I guess it applies, autonomy and ambiguity, presumably a healthy dose of ambiguity continually. That's very confronting for some people.
Well, and
they just shouldn't be there. They just, if they need it spoon feeding and they need absolute structure,
Yes. Yeah. If we talk about the ambiguity, that's really we try to give you the alignment on what we're trying to solve, and the thing for you to figure out is how to go and solve it. That's the ambiguity is literally in the how to execute on it, how to make that thing into reality. And so that's really the people that we need. And I guess the people that shouldn't be working at Kind, and there's plenty of them, the majority of people shouldn't be working at Kind.
Yeah.
Because for the majority of people, that's going to be a really uncomfortable place to be. That's not going to be something that they can fall in love with and get behind. It needs to be something that is deep within you. We are on a journey. We're climbing Mount Everest, and you can't be looking for. I heard a great analogy the other day, but you can't be looking for the hot chocolate stand while you're climbing Everest. We need people whose goal it is to get to the top of Everest. And those are the people that we want to come and join our team. The people that can really, really help to take us into the future and create something that is a little bit magical, a little bit special.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I don't know how true this is, but I read that one of the only questions Elon Musk has asked employees at any level in any function is describe a problem you've solved.
Interesting.
Apparently it is his go-to interview question. And you can understand why when you start to talk about, you can borrow it now. I'm sure he'll probably sue you. But presumably it's exactly that approach you're talking about. And whether that problem is something at home or something elsewhere in life, it's still that mindset, which is, I'm trying to get to here. I'm here. What do I do?
So, you've asked a few times about design and my design background. Fundamentally,
still haven't really answered about whether you're a creative guy or not.
Let me take you through. So, design is actually less about creativity. Design is fundamentally a process, and places like the D School and IDEO have codified that process into a bunch of steps, right?
Yes.
Where you go through understand, then you go and discover some solutions, then you go execute on those, and then you go and launch them to the world and learn from them, and then go back into the cycle. That's fundamentally what design is. Design is, and it's actually baked into a lot of us, it's a way of looking at the world and solving problems.
Yeah.
And this is really, I think, a lot of what my job is to look at the world, to understand what's out there, to understand the problems that people are suffering from. And this has been a career of building up that understanding in our industry, and then translating that into something that will actually be hopefully useful for people. And I guess the creative part of that is like that step 2, where you take all those learnings and you create a future which is possible but not probable. So it's possible, it's achievable, it's something that could be done, but it wasn't going to happen on its own. It wasn't going to happen if you don't do something about it. And that's really what Kind is about. We're not doing anything that's insane. We're not doing anything that's impossible to do. We're doing something that's very much is possible, but it wasn't going to happen on its own. I've ignored this thing for 20 years.
I was going to say, you've waited 20 years and still...
Right.
Do you ever wonder why out of 7 billion people, nobody else has taken this on to the same degree?
I think, I have a few...
Let's not think about it.
I have a few suspicions. One is that the people who actually suffer from this problem are engineers. And engineers are not typically the people who are really, really great at raising capital.
Yes.
And so you have this contrast where the people who have the interest in the problem are not the people who are best equipped to actually go about solving that problem through companies. So you have almost every engineer you ever speak to will tell you how they've tried to solve this thing, but most of them just weren't capitalized enough to be able to achieve it. So I think that's a big part of it. The other part of it is when you look at it in the way that we're solving it, that kind of end-to-end horizontal solution, when you look at that, you kind of go, holy shit, that's pretty big and pretty terrifying. I think I'll not do that right now. And so, I'm going to go look at this marketing problem over here. So my private theory is it's a combination of those two things that has left that gap in the market. I don't think it's going to be for long. We're definitely seeing people starting to sniff around the edges of this problem, just like we are. So we hope we can build really, really fast and grow into it fast.
So a couple of final things. What keeps, when it gets super tough, and I presume it does, what keeps you striving? Or do you sometimes need to check out for a day and say, I actually need some headspace here? And
I love this problem. I've been working towards this problem for 20 years. And so the mission that we're on, and it's not just the mission of solving the technical problem and the product problem, it's the mission of building something, a culture and a company that is special. And when I see my team thriving and succeeding, that's when I know that we're doing something a little bit different. When I see us starting to succeed and starting to translate small baby steps into bigger steps and ever bigger steps, that's the thing that gets me excited and keeps me motivated about it. And luckily, I'm starting to have a team where if I do need a day off, they're starting to be able to fill those gaps and starting to figure out how to grow into these things. Because the more I can empower them, the more I can make them heroes of their own stories.
Absolutely.
The more successful we're going to be.
Is there a? I always say this. One more question. It's like Columbo of podcasting. Is there another kind of landmark of success? Be it, I'll give you examples. Be it landing a certain scale of enterprise client, or well, it's more likely to be startup client. But terrible question. Are there landmarks where again there's a sort of a point of success? You go, right, we've achieved that now, or is it just a seamless, challenging journey?
It's much more seamless than that. I mean, we have some very big ambitious goals of a million customers, a million sites built on top of us, and 50,000 customers using us.
Yeah, right.
But those are future goals.
Yeah.
Really, what we're on right now is a trajectory where we're trying to just organically grow our customers, and we think about kind of small stage points in there. Where 100 customers fully building on top of us is one stage point, and then the next one is 1,000, then 10,000, and then that escalates up. And it's really keeping on that growth, keeping on that approach of constantly banging the drum. That's what it's all about. It's not about looking towards when we hit this point, then we'll be doing well. We have to be better than we were yesterday every single day.
Do you apply the notion of you mentioned a book earlier, another book that was shared with me by Andy Sutton at Endeavour, and actually a couple of other people, is Measure What Matters. Do you have that focus of measure what matters, like try and keep it to 2 or 3 things amidst the noise?
And as with all early stage startups, it's hard for us to measure. We're still working on getting the measurements built in and getting really, really good at that. But I think you have to measure what matters. And I think you have to know what matters in your business as well. I think you have to have that deep understanding of the things that are important and the things that are not. And we're still figuring
that will
it out,
evolve.
but we're getting there. Yeah.
So the final thing, people may want to reach out to you. First of all, would you like people to reach out to you if appropriate?
Yeah.
Hopefully a positive reach out, not not some sort of insult or threat. I don't know.
Feel free to do that too.
You hear that? He's got permission. Where do they find you? And also on a very specific point, is there particular talent out there who you would like to reach out to and say, hey, look, we're interested?
So, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to go check out our website. We have jobs pages up there where if there's a role that you're particularly interested in doing. Mm-hmm. But beyond just people who are looking to work for us, we're just always interested in learning from people and speaking to people, especially if you're a founder or if you're going through some of the battles that you think we might be able to help you with. We'd love to chat with you and see if we can help you along your journey. In terms of people that we look to hire, we're a cross-functional, cross-discipline company. Engineers, though, are definitely the highest priority for us right now because any growing company needs a lot of engineers coming in. And so that's probably one of the biggest roles that we think quite heavily about.
And there is a process where people can reach out and engage, is there?
Absolutely, yeah. So, come to our website or just hit up our support team. We're a small company right now, so anything that you fire into the company is going to get read by almost everybody.
It might seem like a funny question, but we work with a lot of clients who actually have clear mechanisms in place to attract talent, but genuinely, absolutely no process once the talent's actually expressed interest. Literally nothing happens.
So we recently committed, I can't remember the name of the program, but we committed to a program that says every person who applies to Kind will get feedback, will get an answer. So we're not just going to let people disappear.
I think the program is just called Common Decency, isn't it?
I mean, to me, that's just not being an asshole. And so we try to kind of live by that. So if you're applying to any of our, if you go to our jobs page, if you apply through any other mechanism to get to us, you will get a response. And if you come into our support channels and things like that, well, legendary support is what it's all about for us. We deeply, deeply believe in the legendary support. Is one of those mechanisms that you can use to grow a great company.
Well, you don't need me to tell you this, but I will. I mean, if you're responding to people and engaging with people who reach out to you, you're already ahead of probably certainly 50% of businesses.
It's great to hear.
They all talk a good game, but I mean, honestly, it gets lost in the noise. And if there isn't an actual mechanism and an absolute commitment, then the goodwill, the good intentions just disappear and people just do not hear back.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely agree. And I think it gets harder as you scale. We're still early. It's easy for us to say as a 29 people company, it's very easy for us to say, we get back to everybody. We don't have 100 million people applying for jobs. I guess it gets harder as you scale. And you
wait till this goes out.
Oh, well, let's hope. But, when we have new people signing up to use our platform, if they need, additional high-level support, we bring them straight into our Slack group, and we have a one-on-one group with them.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's things like that I think make for great companies. And it's harder to scale, but Shopify's demonstrated you can scale this. So we mean to.
Absolutely. So my final thing is, have you any sort of a nugget of wisdom for the listeners and viewers, either around as entering the world of a startup or scaling a startup, or anything that from the Ross playbook that they should be aware of?
I mean, I think as I've demonstrated after 20 years of looking at the problem and not fucking doing it, there's never a better time to just jump in and do it. Stop. There's this. Stop looking at yourself in the mirror every day.
Yes.
And saying I could do more.
Yep.
Go and do it. It's going to be the hardest, wildest thing you're ever going to do, but you will never know if you don't.
So it's a bit like the Nike one, but with an F word. So it's just fucking do it.
Exactly. Just always drop an F-bomb and you're golden.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Hey, look, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
We could have talked for hours, but I think, I certainly will watch the journey of Kind with interest. You still haven't told me whether anyone does call you Kinder.
Everybody does.
Everybody does.
And we don't mind. So we have a value which is stay foolish.
Yes. Yes.
Which is a reference to naivety.
Yep.
Kinder is a European word often used for child or children.
Yeah, of course.
And so to me, it's like if somebody's saying that, they're referencing that value. They're literally talking about that naivety. And so we think it's really important that people come in naive in our company. They come in with fresh minds to think about it. And so I don't mind if you call it Kinder. The name is Kind, which is really a reference to how can we create the most abundance in the world? How can we create the most value for people? How can we help the most people to succeed? And that's the kindest thing we can do.
Yeah.
And so both names are fine. We just use Kind internally.
Good stuff. Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Always great meeting you. Thank you.
Nice. Cheers, Ross.
Thanks for joining. This podcast was brought to you by Ember, creating talent solutions in technology, transformation, data and analytics, and project services across Australia. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe and share. If you'd like to get in touch with the Ember team, simply send an email, visit the website, or connect on LinkedIn. Contact details can be found in the description. See you next time.